Our story begins on Coruscant around 5 years into Anakin Skywalker's training under Jedi Knight Obi-Wan Kenobi. As Anakin was growing over the years, his skills were advancing much more quickly than his peers, even though Anakin joined the Jedi Order far later than everyone else in his age group. Anakin was an interesting Jedi to say the least, and at least to his council and his peers, they weren't sure what to think of him. At 15 years old now, he was emotionally distant, and yet he still carried a personality that could light up a room if he was in the right mood. He rarely left Obi-Wan's side, and Obi-Wan knew it was because the Jedi had Anakin abruptly leave his mother, only for Qui-Gon to die immediately after. Obi-Wan knew that Anakin was clinging to him because Anakin was extremely afraid of losing him, and Obi-Wan also understood this was bordering on attachment, but Obi-Wan wasn't sure what to do about it. He couldn't exactly remove the need for attachment from Anakin. The boy was raised with a loving mother, something Obi-Wan couldn't really fathom, and now Obi-Wan was trying to balance being a Jedi Master and also being the type of mentor figure that Anakin needs. Sometimes, Obi-Wan would wake up in the morning to find Anakin sleeping in his quarters on the floor. Obi-Wan would get up early and let Anakin get an extra hour of sleep in the bed before their training for the day. Obi-Wan also knew that Anakin was extremely hesitant to trust anyone, as his first impressions of the Jedi was the Council essentially telling him that he should not be trained. Whenever any Jedi Masters tried giving Anakin some help, he couldn't help but wonder if they actually had his best interest in mind. Anakin was a complicated young man, and for the Sith, this should have been perfect. And through the years, Chancellor Palpatine was attempting to lay the groundwork for a friendly, even fatherly, relationship with Anakin Skywalker. Palpatine hoped to be the voice telling Anakin that he was different from the Jedi. But at this early age, something changed in Anakin that shook up Palpatine's plans for the boy. Anakin actually took an interest in politics, as he often wondered about his mother and about Tatooine, and why he was able to become a Jedi while his mother was forced to stay on that wretched planet. And one of the earliest things Anakin understood about the Republic political structure was that there were very few people who should be trusted to have his best interest in mind. He already carried a lingering resentment to the Jedi Council for not being able to free his mother, but the more Anakin thought about it, the more he knew he shouldn't trust anyone in Republic politics. This was affirmed to him when Anakin actually had some alone time with Chancellor Palpatine, and Anakin expressed his desire to see his mother be freed. Palpatine gave the political answer. He told Anakin that it pains him to think of everyone suffering in the Outer Rim, but interfering with Hutt business outside of the Republic is a recipe for disaster. Trade routes will be filled with pirates. It could cause a small war that the Republic simply is not ready for in their refusal to militarize. Palpatine said that, unfortunately, slavery in the Outer Rim is something that everyone must suffer through in order for the Republic to keep on moving and growing together. But to Anakin, all of this meant nothing. He didn't care about the success of the Republic. He cared about people. And when Palpatine gave him this answer, Anakin decided to ask the Jedi about it because, in truth, Anakin always harbored an anger regarding his mother and the Jedi Council, but he never really expressed his true thoughts on her to the Council. Anakin would request a meeting with Yoda, something any Jedi was free to do, and Yoda would grant this request. Obi-Wan would ask Anakin if he wants to come with, and Anakin said yes. When he entered, Master Shakti was there as well, and Anakin always found her presence to be soothing, so he was happy to have her stay as well. Anakin explained how Palpatine has been speaking with him more often, and he had asked Chancellor Palpatine for help in the Outer Rim, help with his mother, as he still often thinks about her being a slave on Tatooine, and he was hoping that the Senate might intervene, but the Chancellor had only offered political excuses about jurisdiction and trade disputes. Anakin said all of it felt so hollow, and now he boldly told these Jedi that they have the power to stop suffering like his mother's, and that it was wrong to ignore slavery just because it was beyond Republic borders. Yoda was studying the boy quietly, while Obi-Wan looked down, clearly pained by this. All of the Jedi agreed. None of them wanted slavery to continue, but moving outside of Senate jurisdiction could easily backfire. Obi-Wan said that it's not that they didn't care, but they do serve at the Senate request, and Tatooine exists outside of Republic control. Acting without permission could cause chaos within the Order, make them look like aggressors. Anakin pushed back, asking how they can talk about peace while turning away from something so cruel. Shakti spoke up with her calm tone, radiating around the room. She told Anakin that he was right to feel what he did, but that the Jedi couldn't simply march into Hutt territory with their lightsabers drawn. Instead, she suggested that the Jedi organize missions near the Outer Rim under a sort of guise of humanitarian aid, using their influence to negotiate for the freedom of slaves and offer protection to the vulnerable. She said that, officially, these could be sort of peacekeeping missions, sanctioned by the Senate, but quietly guided by the Jedi's own conscience. Yoda frowned, leaning on his cane. He said that such an idea is risky. The Hutts and the slavers, they hold great power, and any interference could lead to greater conflict. But Shakti reminded Yoda that the conflict already exists, it just doesn't touch the comfort of Coruscant. Her words left the room quiet. Anakin's eyes went wide. Shakti, despite her calm voice, just took a bit of a shot at Yoda and the Council. She was still young enough to not be fully ingrained in the Council's blindness to the outer galaxy, whereas Yoda rarely left Coruscant. He never went into the Outer Rim. He didn't know how bad things truly have become. But he actually smiled a bit, telling Shakti that she may be right. Obi-Wan admitted that perhaps small, careful missions could make a difference without drawing too much attention. Anakin stepped closer to Yoda, saying that he grew up on Tatooine, seeing the Jedi as heroes of the people. They were legendary to him, but upon being here on Coruscant, he wonders if they've become something unrecognizable. Yoda looked at him for a long moment, finally telling Anakin that perhaps his heart saw what the rest of them have forgotten to look for. Yoda also told Anakin that he reminds him of his former Padawan, Dooku, and Yoda was realizing that Dooku's path of seeing things differently and leaving the Jedi Order could become a pattern with Jedi like Anakin if the Jedi continued to be so stubborn. The group would be dismissed. Anakin felt grateful. He also felt like the Jedi gave him much more reason to trust them than Palpatine did. And now we will fast forward 3 months later, as Anakin Skywalker is standing with now Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi, deflecting heavy blaster fire on Zagiria. In recent years, with the aid of a building coalition of neutral systems, the Zagirian slave empire was beginning to be reborn, even after the Republic and the Jedi dismantled it many years ago. And over the last month, Anakin and Obi-Wan have been at the head of a campaign to shut it down once more. While Zagiria was not explicitly part of the Republic, peace treaties were signed many decades ago to completely outlaw slavery from here after the Jedi Order helped to shut it down. And now that the Zagirians have broken those treaties, the Jedi were back to fight. Over the last few months, Yoda and the Council Masters were examining Outer Rim planets for the first time in so long, and they found planets like Zagiria were reigniting their slave empire under their noses. For planets like Zagiria, the Senate could not interfere with the Jedi siege. The treaty was between the Zagirian government and the Jedi, so the Jedi had full autonomy to run into battle here, and it was exactly what Anakin hoped for. It also made his belief that Palpatine was nothing more than a politician in all of this for his own gain to be affirmed. It was the Jedi who granted this mission, whereas Palpatine said it was basically impossible. And for 2 weeks, Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Shakti were the 3 main Jedi in Zagiria, while others were rotating in and out. And today, Anakin and Obi-Wan guided slaves out of their prisons, while Shakti moved with a group of Jedi Knights into the main castle. When nightfall came, the freed slaves were fighting alongside the Jedi, and Zagiria was free from this oppression as the leaders of the slave empire were arrested. This was the fight that would ignite the Jedi moving into other Outer Rim worlds, and although the Jedi didn't have treaties on planets like Kessel or Tatooine, they were inching away from the Republic in order to find their old roots from the Old Republic, where fighting for the people in the Outer Rim was more important. This would have a few unintended ripple effects. While the Jedi were spreading into the Outer Rim to fight back against the oppression that's become widespread since they all became centered in on Coruscant, corporations like the Trade Federation, Techno-Union, and Banking Clan were losing their minds. In the shadows, they all profited so heavily on slavery, and these profits were part of what was being used to fund the droid army. Newt Gunray, Sandhill, and Wat Tambor would schedule a meeting on Sereno. They would ask Dooku to put a stop to this, one way or another. Perhaps the Clone Wars must begin early. Gunray said that every day the Jedi are allowed to continue their anti-slavery crusade, and more planets will side with them instead of seceding when the time for war comes. Dooku heard all of this, and after they were dismissed from his castle, He washed his hands of their greedy filth, and he looked inward at himself. Dooku left the Jedi because they'd become the Senate lapdogs, while the galaxy outside of Coruscant was crumbling. But if the Jedi were moving back into the galaxy, and if planets had a chance to prosper again, then maybe the plans of the Sith were wrong. Dooku knew the upcoming war would be beyond bloody and awful for the entire galaxy, but for so long, he thought it was the only way. For so long, Dooku thought the galaxy had to be completely torn down before he could help rebuild in a better way. But maybe he was wrong. Dooku would begin reaching out to the Jedi. He would ask what has changed, and Dooku would speak to an old friend, someone he disagreed with on many issues, Ki-Adi-Mundi. Mundi would tell Dooku that he doesn't agree with everything the Council is doing, but he must admit that the anti-slavery missions have reignited some life and some hope into a Jedi Order that had felt a bit stale. Dooku would continue looking into this with extreme curiosity, and on Tatooine, now 17-year-old Anakin Skywalker would be part of a mission to Tatooine that was actually approved by the Senate. There were still some good people left on Tatooine, and together they were putting in requests for aid for drought conditions affecting galactic trade. There would be an assessment of the drought, something that was quite common, but the Jedi also planned to overstep their boundaries a bit. Anakin, Obi-Wan, Kit Fisto, and Nadar Veb were on this mission, and Obi-Wan was quick to admit that he would be perfectly fine if this was the last time on this wretched sand world. Over the course of a few weeks, Anakin would find his mother safely living with the Lars family here on Tatooine. She was bought out of Watto's service, and now lived a fair life as a housewife in a rather happy family, all things considered. On that first night here, Anakin and Shmi would walk alone in the night sand near the home, and Shmi would ask Anakin why the Jedi are here. Anakin said he actually thinks it might have something to do with him. A year or so ago, the Chancellor of the Republic was actually trying to get closer to Anakin for reasons Anakin didn't quite understand, and Anakin brought up the idea of freeing the slaves. Palpatine had initially shot it down, and Anakin lost basically all of his trust with the man after the Jedi actually affirmed him on the idea. Anakin admitted that he once looked up to Palpatine, but after meeting him, he just sees him as another politician who will do or say anything to stay in power. Shmi asked Anakin if the Jedi are different, and Anakin said that he wants to believe that they are. For the first many years in the temple, he let his feelings of resentment, frustration, or anger cloud his judgment, but he can see that deep down, the Jedi are more like Qui-Gon than they realize. They just need a bit of a push. And Anakin said he hopes to be the one to help make that push. The two of them would enjoy this night together, and in the morning, the Jedi began planting seeds into the minds of the slaves here that a revolt was possible. Within a week, it was not the Jedi explicitly leading a slave revolution, but the slaves fighting back with the Jedi were stepping in to help. By the time the Jedi left, Tatooine was in chaos, in a good way, and this time, crime leaders such as Jabba and the corporate leaders like Nute Gunray didn't reach out to Dooku. They contacted the Dark Lord Darth Sidious waiting in the shadows about this. Sidious said he will work to ensure the overstepping of the Jedi stops immediately, and Chancellor Palpatine would wait for Anakin to arrive back from Tatooine. He would bring him, alone, into his office once more. Palpatine told Anakin that the actions of the Jedi are highly respectable, but he fears the crime lords of the Outer Rim will not react kindly to this Jedi interference. Anakin just argued that the Jedi really didn't do much on Tatooine. It was the people who rose up against their slavers. Palpatine said this is a kind way of looking at things, but he fears Jabba and the others may not see it that way, and war may be rising up in due time if the Jedi do not step back. Anakin and Palpatine walked into the other side of the office, Anakin's frustration growing, but then both of them heard the doors sliding open, and a lightsaber was ignited. Palpatine and Anakin both turned to see Count Dooku of Sereno standing here. Dooku and Anakin had never actually met before, but Anakin remembered something Yoda told him a while back. Yoda told Anakin he reminded him of Dooku, and today, Dooku told Anakin to step away from the Chancellor. Nightfall had come on Coruscant, and Dooku had spent the last few weeks truly contemplating his place in the galaxy. Ultimately, he decided he must stick to what he believes in, and if the Jedi are finally going down the path he always hoped they would, then he must show them that this way was always the way. Dooku told Anakin that this man cannot be trusted. Palpatine is a Sith Lord. Palpatine looked at Anakin with his kind eyes, and he asked the boy not to listen to Dooku. He was a Jedi who's fallen away from the Order because of his innate darkness, and now he's here to help create the war that Palpatine has been warning Anakin of. Palpatine asked Anakin to trust him, but Anakin stepped towards Dooku, igniting his own lightsaber, telling Palpatine he trusts the Jedi, he trusts the people of the galaxy, not him. Sidious's eyes flickered to a dark yellow as he pulled out his red saber, telling his current student Dooku and his hopeful future student Anakin that they must be in need of a true lesson of what power actually looks like. Sidious would strike first, hoping to catch the two of them off guard, and Anakin dove backwards towards Dooku. As Sidious moved in with fast strikes, vicious blows, he was a blur of dark motion. Dooku got in front of Anakin, and he parried each strike with perfect movements, while Anakin got to his feet, took a small second to center himself, and he met every blow with raw power that Palpatine had only heard of before today. As the three of them fought, the room filled with flashes of red and blue. Dooku blocked a strike on his right side, but Sidious twisted, slamming a kick right into his chest, knocking Dooku to the floor. Anakin ran in with an aggressive swing, but Sidious quickly hurled Anakin across the room with a wave of his hand, then turned his lightning onto Dooku, who was still getting back to his feet. The Count caught it on his blade, sliding back towards the window because of the sheer power, but he was holding it firm. Anakin rose, using the Force to slam a console towards Sidious, breaking his concentration. When Sidious looked back up, Dooku and Anakin were moving together. Dooku cut low and Anakin went high, and together they pressed their strength, movements starting to flow as one, despite them never having met before right now. Sidious leapt, twisting through the air, but Anakin caught him mid-turn, slamming his blade back to the ground. Dooku moved in, his strike carving through Sidious's robe, drawing a pained snarl. The Sith retaliated with a force blast that shattered the window behind them, sending glass spinning out into the wind. And through the chaos, Anakin would dive forward, blade a streak of blue. Dooku swept low. Their attacks met in perfect timing, and Sidious fell to his knees. His saber dropped, and Dooku put a hand in front of Anakin, telling the boy he will be the one to finish this. Dooku struck Sidious down, and Dooku knew things could change dramatically from here. He was hopeful that he could be a catalyst for real good change. Anakin looked down on the fallen Chancellor, a man who'd reached out to him more than any Council Jedi ever did, and it wasn't hard for Anakin to put the pieces together. Dooku trusted Palpatine, and he fell down a dark path. Anakin could only wonder if he would have fallen down the same path had he trusted this man. And in the first year after Sidious's fall, the galaxy did not collapse, despite the hundreds of strings attached to Palpatine. Instead, with the help of Dooku and the Jedi, his death exposed vast webs of corruption running through the Senate, the Banking Clan, the Trade Federation, entire sectors of the Republic built on lies, backroom deals, and suffering. Dooku was becoming a figure into the public eye, proposing a confederate of free systems to rebuild where the Republic had failed. The Jedi, under the guidance of Yoda and Windu, would support this movement as mediators and protectors, spreading across the Outer Rim to help where the Republic's reach had grown thin. Obi-Wan worked beside Dooku, negotiating peace on worlds torn by neglect, while Anakin and other young Jedi joined missions to free slaves and drive out criminal syndicates. For the first time in generations, the Jedi were seen not as servants of the Senate, but as guardians of the people, just as Anakin always thought they should be. By the second year, the Confederation had become a beacon of stability. Hundreds of worlds that once suffered under Hutt control or corporate exploitation were actually beginning to rebuild. Jedi Knights traveled alongside engineers, healers, ambassadors, offering guidance or aid wherever necessary. Mace Windu led efforts to dismantle slave markets across the Outer Rim. Yoda spent his time moving between Coruscant and Sereno, ensuring the alliance between the Republic and Dooku's new Confederation remained strong and that the Jedi could work with both. Anakin was a symbol of hope among these liberated worlds, and the Jedi Temple would transform along with the Jedi Order. As outposts and temples were restored across the galaxy, the Coruscant Temple became more of a hub for outreach, with its halls open to scholars, senators, refugees, citizens in need. And by the third year, the Republic's constant circulation of interim chancellors eventually saw Padme Amidala of Naboo run an excellent campaign that gave her the role at a very young age. Padme's optimism and clarity inspired people to actually pay attention and believe in the Republic again. Her collaboration with Dooku built a necessary bridge. The Jedi thrived within this new balance as teachers, negotiators, protectors, and 3 years after Sidious's defeat, the galaxy was seeing true peace that wasn't hiding with chaos beyond the core. The Republic and the Confederation existed side by side, two systems united by a purpose. The Jedi walked among the people, as they had long ago. Anakin would finally learn to trust one politician, Chancellor Amidala, who was so much different than Chancellor Palpatine, who Anakin luckily learned to see through before it was too late. And the future of the galaxy was in good hands. And folks, that's our story for today. One that I've gotten many requests for, so I hope I, did well for all of you. I appreciate you guys. Yeah, this one, it was interesting. I wanted to take a path that was, I don't know, I didn't want to end up just in Revenge of the Sith, I guess. I wanted to take it earlier than that. Just because if you never trusted Palpatine, the events of Revenge of the Sith never really would have come to pass in general. So, yeah, I really wanted to take it to a point where Anakin's frustration just kind of boils over very early on, and take it in a more positive light, as I tend to do, just because, I don't know, it's my style. So, appreciate you guys. Let me know what you think of this one. Let me know what you want to see next, of course, and I'll see you in the next video.